house. I saw him probably 2 or 3 times when I was a little boy. He bought me
In
my first
1/2
bike,
mile,
my first
keep
watch,
right.
only because my mother asked him to, you know. And, you know, back in those days, in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't really like this thing around child support. You just kind of said, hey, can you help us? And I'll never forget the day, as I described in the book, you know, when I was 8 years old, it was a rainy day. And, you know, just to put this in context, folks, you know, things we take for granted now. We didn't have a telephone. Not only did we have a situation where it was 2 mothers and 2 sons in a 1-bedroom apartment, we had no house phone. And I didn't even know what a color TV looked like until the 80s. You know, I remember going to friends' houses and their TVs were different than ours. I was like, what's wrong with their TVs? It was color, you know. And my mother on this day, you know, went to the drugstore. She took me with her. It was a rainy day, and she asked my dad, you know, can you help us?
In 1/4 mile, turn right.
And he actually caught a really bad attitude and said, you know what? You lied to me. He's not my son. I'm not going to give you a near nickel. That's the phrase that he used to my mother, because he was also from the South, so I guess that was a Southern term or something. And he hung up the phone to my mother. And what I remember is that it devastated her, because I think the reality kicked in that I've got to do this by myself. Keep in mind, I'm 8 years old, so that meant the next 10 years, because the way I was raised, you know, and I think this is a lot of families I've seen, you know,
turn
18
right.
is kind of like that cutoff. Like, you got to go to college or go to the military or do something, but that's when you're an adult. And my mother realized, you know, I've got to do 10 years of this by myself now. And we were on welfare and food stamps and government cheese. When I think about some of the money that I make now as a speaker at colleges and corporations, I literally make in one speech what my mother made in 1 year raising me by herself.
Did you realize as an 8-year-old boy that was going to be the end of your relationship with your father?
Yeah, there was a finality to it, and it was the beginning of this hole in me as a child, feeling like there was this void. And you start to do what a lot of children do. You start to blame yourself for that situation.
In 1 3/4 miles, turn left.
You know, not only was I a voracious reader as a child, but I watched a lot of TV, and so every year at school, they would ask me, what's your mother's name? I'd say Shirley. And then they'd say, what's your father's name? One year it would be like James Evan from Good Times. Another year it would be like Michael Brady from the Brady Bunch. You know what I mean? I would just make up names of people that I saw on TV because I didn't want to say I don't have a father. You know what I mean? And it was a profound loss that I carried with me into my adult life as I talk about, you know.
You were a brilliant little boy, stuck out. Your mom took you to the library, you took to reading. Your teachers, you write in your report cards, noted that you excelled in school, and also noted that you had trouble getting along with other kids.
I had problems.
Where do you think that came from?
It's a good question. I mean, I think there's a lot of things. One, my mother was incredibly strict. Let me put it this way. My mother did the best that she could with what she had. And so, you know, you think about it, she's a poor black woman from the South. She's in the North, which is technically a foreign country for us, like an immigrant coming from, you know, a foreign country, and you're trying to adapt culturally to this space. You know, the first man that you fall in love with, you get impregnated by him, and then he just disses you, kicks you to the curb. And now you've got to deal with, you know, a northern environment, which is foreign. You've got to deal with the abandonment. You've got to work. You've got to survive. And so my mother was angry, and my anger came out of that. It came out of, you know, the abandonment by my father. And so, you know,